the concept of expressing and creating myself was something that I was intrigued and inspired to do since I was really young. So I started writing poems, if I can even call them that, when I was 6 years old, and dancing, and started writing songs when I was 9. I had a friend of the family who was doing it, and she was so close to us that it didn't seem like something that was so out of reach to me. I talked with several different record companies during that time, and understandably, as I saw it, signing a record deal with a 10-year-old seemed a little scary to them. So I just thought, I want to release it to whomever wants to hear it, and the only way to do that was to form my own company with a friend of mine. So we formed a record label called L'Amour Records. L was for his name, Lindsay, and A was for mine, and both our last names rather were started with M-O-R. I signed with MCA Publishing when I was 14, and they just wanted to support me writing songs, and it was one of the only developmentally mindseted kind of experience that I have really had with any sort of company. So that was lovely, and I'm still in a relationship with the person who signed me to this day, so it's great. I surf in my free time, and I hang out with my friends. I'm creating this house I used to live in. I'm building all kinds of extra rooms on it and creating an art barn. So people will be writing screenplays and painting, and just basically this house full of creative energy. For me, life is about creating community right now and just following my gut, listening to my stomach. And right now it's all about the ocean for some reason. I'm all about water sports. So my manager called me the other day and said, "So what's going on?" I spent 20 minutes telling him about repotting my lavender plant. So I think my priorities are shifting. I'll always be making records until I die. I'm going to spend a little bit of time investigating expressing through film over the next year or two, which I love. And I'll be writing a book or 10 before I die. And over the next decade or so, I'd love to start a family and have kids. I met with several different people when I first moved to Los Angeles, and Glen Ballard was one of them. And I walked into his house, and we met for 15 minutes and just chatted, and then we started writing. We wrote a song called The Bottom Line that first day. And I could tell that this was going to be an environment where I would be able to tap into parts of my creative self that I'd never done before. A lot of the songs that I was writing when I was younger were written with collaborators who very much viewed the songwriting process in a very certain, distinct way, and in my estimation, somewhat of a rigid way, in terms of lyrics and rhyming, and it was a very perfectionistic experience from what I remember, which was great. It taught me so many things on how to use my voice, and when I was in Los Angeles and working with Glen Ballard, it was very much about writing from a place that was very stream of consciousness and not from my mind, using my mind to sort of have it be siphoned through so I could put it into words, but just letting it be a channeled experience in a way that I'd always envisioned it to be. I had already written in that way when I wrote in my journal, or in my, what I loosely view as poetry when I was younger. So I already knew that whole feeling of something writing itself, but I'd never really done it in my songs. I'd done it when I was performing the songs, but not while I was writing it. So it really required being in an environment where we could be out of our heads. And that takes a lot of courage, I think. It was great. My ego was involved. My insecurity was involved. All of it was being sort of praised and quelled, and, so everything was running rampant. I was still so excited to express myself, and I felt blessed to be able to sing and dance and do all these things. So I was very happy and very confused. There were a lot of different messages that were being sent to me during that time. So, but it was a perfect experience. I don't have one regret. I moved from Ottawa to Toronto for about a year and a half to, as I remember, to grow up, really, to pay my bills and to learn what it meant to live in a different city without family around or community as such, and wrote inwards of about, I wrote about 50 songs with different people and was a workaholic to the bone. And then I moved to Los Angeles because I really wanted to be there, but I felt like Toronto was going to be a nice stopping point between Ottawa and Los Angeles for me. This is not a favorite song that I have, but one that I always enjoy finishing the shows with is "Thank You." I just feel like there's no greater prayer to whomever we pray to, in my estimation, than gratitude. So anytime I can end something on gratitude, I'm happy. I'm going through this period of time where I'm just realizing that so many of what I consider to be my difficult, victim kind of experiences were all gifts. And And yet at the same time, I've been in silence for a long time about a lot of things that had happened in the past in order to protect other people. But in the act of trying to protect other people, I wasn't taking care of myself. I was thinking about their own, privacy issue at the cost of my own value, which is that I want to be as transparent as I possibly can be and as authentic as I can be. So I was basically lying in withholding the truth about what my life experience had been. So it's that fine line of trying to respect someone's privacy while not being secretive. And that's the ultimate challenge for me. And I don't really believe in privacy. So for me, my goal is to be as completely visible as I can be. I also know that other people don't really have that value. So it's a tough line to walk. I just felt liberated by speaking the truth about it. And I still haven't really told everything about it, and maybe I don't need to. But I think it shed some light maybe for myself anyway, onto why some of the things happened the way that they did, and also just was liberating in just being honest about it. I mean, there's nothing better than speaking the truth, especially after having been silent for so many years. I loved it. It's this amazing, again, it's like another snapshot of a period of time. So I think of that record as a time where I rose to the occasion, even in the face of a massive amount of pressure. And I think of songs like That I Would Be Good and Thank You, and those are some of my favorite songs that I've ever written. So it was a good time in that sense. When it was finished, I was very happy. The pressure lifted in some senses, but the internal pressure that I had, the voices in my head that said I am nothing unless I'm working and being productive, they were louder than ever. So the pressure was on from within myself to tour at a breakneck pace, and I don't know what I was thinking, but definitely not really looking to take care of my own peace of mind while I was on tour. I tried. We wrote, I think, somewhere around 10 songs before the official writing of Jagged Little Pill began, and we wrote them very quickly. The songs were written, I think, somewhere around 20 minutes each, 25 minutes, and recorded right away. So they were the original vocals and the original guitar takes a lot of times, and it was a very sacred process, but certainly not precious. The first 10 songs that I wrote before Jagged Little Pill, that's what we shared with people, and I wasn't really ready to share them yet. I was still in that sort of incubation period, and there was not a great response from anyone, really. There's a lot of people very afraid to even consider, and I totally understood. It was okay. I still was writing, and then I started writing You Ought to Know and Perfect and a bunch of songs that were on Jagged Little Pill, and then we shared that. I think it was a bit of my feeling pressure from people and from within myself to follow up Jagged Little Pill. Every grocery store counter that I was at every day was, I was met with questions about when my next record would come out. So during the writing of that record, it was such a delicate balance between wanting to feel inspired to write it and have it be sort of stream of consciousness like I had done with Jagged Little Pill, and trying to hold the pressure-filled voices at bay. And it was very hard. I was very angry while I was writing that record. Then there were times where I would go to the studio with Glen and I would say, I'd like to be anywhere else on earth right now other than the studio, and he would say, then go away. He'd say, then leave. So I would leave, and I'd come back, 2 days later and write again. Maverick was important in the sense that our goals were aligned in terms of wanting to share music, and they were ready to sign someone that they really believed in. So our goals were aligned in that moment. I met with Madonna when I first shared a couple of songs with Guy Oseary and Freddie DeMann, who was there at the time too, and I was just fresh off the Canadian boat, so I was very wide-eyed and yet just excited to be finally writing songs in the way that I was doing. So very supportive, very nurturing environment when I first was there, yeah. I'm not really that attached to any outcome of what I do, although I had a sense when I was writing it that there would be people that would relate to it. I didn't know that many people would. And frankly, it was disconcerting to have that many people relate to it because they weren't all very happy songs. So it induced a lot of empathy in me that a lot of people were relating to it. But I guess it was, I don't know. I could go on forever about why or why not. I remember I did a song for the Dogma soundtrack called Still, and we recorded it at Abbey Road, and I wrote it in my hotel room and produced it on my own. And I remember my sweet drummer I was playing with at the time, Gary, he turned to me and said, "So you're going to do the next record on your own, aren't you?" And I was like, "I guess so." Because the natural next step in my progression or evolution was to investigate what that would be like. So I knew that I would do that. And having produced the Unplugged record, which is not a full-blown version of producing anyway, it's like dipping my toe in the pool, I knew that I could do it. So it was the next step out of curiosity, really, to see what it would sound like. And I really love facilitating. I love creating an environment where people can thrive and everyone do what they do best and synergize, and that's my favorite experience. So that's ultimately what producing is to me. For me, the challenge in producing was to step outside of each role and just know which hat I was wearing at which time. So the songwriting process was its own distinct time period. And then producing, I put on the producer hat, and that was its own period. And I did it much in the same way that I wrote songs with Glen for Jagged Little Pill and Supposed, in that I kept the original vocals and everything was done to digital tape. So I just kept a lot of the original takes from the demos, so I didn't have to worry about re-recording any vocals, and bringing in the musicians at that point was like putting all the colors in. It was like a black and white photo, and then it just sprang to life with all these colors. A lot of times themes emerge. I mean, the mission statement, if anything, if there could have even been one, was to just let this record be a snapshot of what is on my mind and in my heart at this time. That's all I ever do. And the themes always emerge, and I always figure out what the themes are later. Oftentimes, years later, I'll think, oh, that's what I was thinking. Interesting.